Hi, welcome to Firefox OS apps from setup to submission. I'm kind of glad that we have a smaller group here because it feels a little more informal, so we can have a little more fun. It's really interesting that last year at Openwest we had one sort of workshop on this topic. A couple of us were there. AJ went ahead and bought a phone right at the end of the session. He was that interested. But this year we have quite a bit more, and I think that's really cool. So there's this talk. If you want some more detail, Dan Callahan will be speaking right after this on the same topic. And then come on Saturday, which is tomorrow, we're doing a workshop where you actually can get your hands on actual phones and make something actually potentially useful, right? With AJ. So it's really cool that we have so much representation here. So this talk, I'm going to just kind of give a brief background of Firefox OS, what it is, what it's about, and what it's like to develop apps for it. And then I'm going to kind of run through a quick example of a process you might go through to do it, and show you a tool that you can use to help you kind of kickstart your development. So first of all, what is Firefox OS? It's an open source operating system that is running on phones and tablets, and even now TVs are coming up. They just made a deal with, Mozilla just made a deal with Panasonic, I think it was. Yeah. Earlier they announced it at CES this year. So there are going to be some TVs running this operating system. It's going to look a little different, but it's the same operating system. So what makes Firefox OS special is that the entire user interface is a web app. The interface you see here, all the structure, the styling, that's just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript running it. I think it's like a Linux kernel running underneath, but the whole user interface is the web. And that means also that the individual apps running them are web apps as well, which makes it really easy for a web developer to go in and start making mobile apps that run on phones, using technologies you're already familiar with. And what the OS provides are additional APIs that you can use to access functionality that are specific to the device. You know, like the vibration. Some of these APIs are already web standards, like geolocation. Some are not quite standards, but they're available to Firefox OS. And you're going to really, if you come to the workshop, you're going to explore that a lot more. So one thing I know people wonder is, like, who the heck is using Firefox OS? You don't see that anywhere. And the answer is actually a lot more people than you think. This is, at least when I made it, this is the latest information I could find. All the highlighted countries are countries where a Firefox OS device is available for sale. You notice that the US is not one of them, and that's probably why you don't hear about it very much. But it actually is selling across the world. And that was part of the strategy, is they're targeting markets where there isn't already a domination by big players in the smartphone world. You know, Apple and Android are not huge there. We have a lot of people that have never had a smartphone before, and that's the kind of people that they're targeting, at least for now. So some things to keep in mind based on this is, first of all, you're dealing with an international audience, so localization is really important. It's also really hard, but it's something to keep in mind. And like I said, many of these people are first-time smartphone users. They might not be familiar with the conventions that you associate with a smartphone. So you want to make things really easy to use, but that's always true anyway, right? A lot of these devices are not your iPhone 6 Plus. These are lower power devices. They don't have quite the processing power or the space, the storage space available, things like that. Just the stuff to keep in mind. You want these things to be really performant and not be huge. Also, and I don't have any actual data on this, but I think a lot of these people that have these devices, they're not going to have the best data connectivity. either they have really expensive data plans, or Wi-Fi isn't really generally available. So we really want to put an emphasis on offline applications. Thankfully, with Firefox OS, that's pretty simple to do. And that's what we're going to focus on, actually. So what makes a Firefox OS app a Firefox OS app? We just said they're web apps. But are they really? And I apologize to Dan for stealing his title, because that's pretty much his title of the next talk. But the answer is pretty much yes. I'd say the important key is you need this file called the app manifest. It's a manifest. The file name is manifest.webapp, and it's a JSON file. And you just need to specify several fields to make the app work. So what the device is going to look for these things. I listed here the fields that are required for an app to work. So you have the name, the short description, the launch path. Basically, since this is a web app, you need to tell it what HTML file to open first. There's a good chance you're just going to have one HTML file, but you need to specify what it is. Icons, you need to have at least a 128 by 128 icon, and they have guidelines for how to style those. 512 is also recommended. You need to give information about yourself. You just need a name, really. You don't need a URL, but it's a good idea. And the type we're going to get to in a second. And also, this is a place where you can specify if you require any additional permissions from the device. You need access to file storage or the camera or stuff like that. You put those in a permissions field there. So how do you publish an app? How do you get it out there? There's a site called, this is the main way. There's a site called Firefox Marketplace, marketplace.firefox.com. It's kind of like your basic app store and a Firefox OS phone is already going to have an app there for opening up the marketplace. So this is the place to be for discoverability. But you're not limited to this. You can host your own apps. They even kind of have documentation on building your own marketplace if that's what you want to do. But the easiest way to get discovered is through here. Yeah?
Do they have a curation process like Apple's where you have to submit it to them and then they review it before putting it on the store?
Yeah, there is a bit of an approval process.
Okay.
And it's slower than I expected. I submitted an app, and it took about a week to hear back from them,
Okay.
I think. I don't know if maybe Dan, you said they had...
The upside is that, so depending on what you're trying to do, the approval process will be faster or slower depending on what device permissions you're accessing. But one of the things we want to do with Firefox OS is really push the idea that the web doesn't have marketplaces. The web doesn't have a single marketplace. And so we want you to be able to self-host and self-publish these apps and without having to go through any sort of gatekeeper.
Okay.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So, question about that. If I had well, first of all, how would I tell the phone, maybe this is out of scope, so just cut me off if it's too far.
Yeah, maybe Dan would be able to answer this better later, but...
If I want to tell my phone, like, hey, I want to be able to add stuff from Marketplace X, then I can add some other marketplace, and I can get like apps that have certified permissions. Like, let's say I don't like the default calling app.
Not certified permissions, but we can dig into that
Okay.
later on in the presentation.
Yeah, I was actually I'm not gonna go into too much detail about this, but so basically you have two main options for publishing an app. There's packaged and there's hosted. So hosted is just your standard web app. It's hosted on the web. All you need really is that manifest.webapp. You submit that file the URL to that file to the marketplace, and then when the user installs the app, they're really just kind of installing the reference to that web app. Alternatively, you can package it up, and you package it up in a zip file, you upload it to the marketplace, and then when a user installs it, they download it, unpackage it. It's done all automatically for them. But so there are pros and cons to each side. When we're talking about offline applications, package is the way to go because all the assets are there in the package. Otherwise, they have to get online to get those. You're going to have access to more APIs. We're going to get to that in a minute, but packaged apps have more access, or they can. You also have to deal with limited space because everything's going to be installed on the device, whereas if you're hosting it, the space is your problem, not the phone's. And apparently it takes longer to review a packaged app, probably because of the permissions process, because you can use extra permissions. But yeah, so there's some things to keep in mind. We're kind of focusing on packaged apps for this one. And just briefly, so we got 3 basic permission levels that an app can fall into. You saw in the manifest.web app I said privileged. So this is a privileged web app, and that means that you can request access to special APIs that aren't normally available, that aren't the standard APIs. Privileged access is only available to packaged apps. So a packaged app can be privileged or a web app. A web app is standard. Certified apps are internal to the operating system. The operating system is entirely open source, so you can hack on that, but you can't. A regular developer couldn't just create a certified app, submit it to the marketplace, and that's not going to be accepted. The user wouldn't be able to download that. So one of the frustrations is that a lot of these APIs that we want to use are still only available to certified apps, and that's something that's sort of gradually changing. The way it works is usually they have a new API, it's only available to certified apps for a while, and then they work on it, they sort of harden it, they make sure it's secure, and then they open it up to lower level permissions. And ideally it becomes a web standard, and then it's just available to everyone. Okay. So a couple things just to keep in mind, some gotchas I discovered when I was working on this. Stuff that just sort of surprised me. First one, there's sort of a fairly strict content security policy for packaged web apps. As it turns out, if you violate any of these, it only gives you a warning, and it doesn't actually reject you. But it told me that if my particular app didn't require any extra permissions, it said if I were to ask for those, then I would have a problem. So I was lucky. But so some of these things you have to keep in mind. We're talking about packaged apps again. So remote scripts are banned, inline scripts are banned, remote styles are banned. Eval is disallowed, which seems like a no-brainer kind of, but have any of you ever used Webpack? It's a packaging tool, and you have like different ways to load in scripts, and I had to use a script. There's a tool called the script loader, and what that does is it brings in the script and processes it with eval. It runs it that way. It just did that automatically for me, and I discovered that that's actually not cool to Firefox OS. So something to keep in mind. Another one that got me was this set timeout and set interval. You actually have to pass a function to those functions if you're going to use them. You can't pass a variable that points to a function. You have to pass an actual function. Does that make sense? So when you have set timeout, you're passing in a callback like set timeout and then pass in function, do something.
I think that's just you can't pass a string of the function.
See, I discovered this when it was actually like a dependency I was using, a third-party thing it was passing in like an object property that happened to be a function, but it wasn't an actual function that you're passing in. There was an open bug about this on Bugzilla, and it was open like a year ago, and I submitted something later. I said, this is a kind of a problem. But I don't know. They might not be able to do anything about it. Do you know anything about this, Dan? Or?
Sorry, I'm trying to get my demos to work.
Oh, sorry.
What was the question?
So about this, you have to pass actual functions to set timeout and set interval.
Yeah, the CSP only allows script source self. So any JavaScript that's not being pulled from an external file, is verboten.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
does that answer the question versus doing an inline string? Was that the question?
No, see, in my case, it was like an object. It was like a variable that I was passing in to set timeout.
Oh.
And the variable was, like the value of the variable was a function, but since it wasn't an actual function I was passing in, it got rejected.
Oh, that seems weird.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Maybe that technically needs to go through some sort of evaluation, like eval step to dereference from the variable to the function. But
Yeah, and technically it could be changed. The value could be reassigned.
Right.
Maybe that's why, but it was kind of a pain because this was a third-party dependency I was using. It wasn't my own code I could
Right.
change. Anyway, stuff like that. Also, privacy. And I shouldn't have left this to the end because you actually need to be thinking about privacy from the beginning. You have to write a privacy policy when you submit your app. And you need to be careful about how you word it, apparently. You can't just throw something in there. Unless you aren't actually collecting any data at all, then it's easy. So plan ahead for how you're going to use user data. Have a plan for it. Mozilla's really big on privacy, obviously, so respect that. The easiest way to get around that is, write an offline app that only stores data on the user's device and doesn't ever communicate with the server. That's what I did. But it happened to work for what I was doing, so yeah. Okay, so now we're going to go to an example. Are there any questions up to this point? Anything you're burning to know? Okay. Sorry. All right, so what you don't need very much. Obviously, you need the Firefox browser, and I recommend using the Developer Edition. Have any of you ever used Firefox Developer Edition? Are you familiar with it? We have stickers that have that logo on there. So Firefox Developer Edition is basically, it's 2 releases ahead of the stable version. It used to be called Aurora, and they rebranded it last year as part of some anniversary thing, I think. But it's cool because it actually runs alongside stable, and they use 2 different profiles so they're not conflicting with each other. So I like to use a Developer Edition for dev work, and then I use the stable version for just stupid stuff. And it's nice because you get developer features a lot sooner than you would with just using the stable version. And that includes like dev tools enhancements, which are really nice. So when you have a Firefox, you need a tool called the Web IDE, which is built right in. It's this icon right here. It's going to be there. If you haven't Developer Edition, it's going to be there on the toolbar, but it might not be for the regular version. It might be in the menu here, or it might be in the DevTools menu, which also might be in here instead. Or you can press Shift F8. So that's infinitely loading. Okay. So the Web IDE is it's a useful tool for connecting to simulators or devices and running apps on them. You can actually also just directly code in them. It's not the best code editor, but it's usable. And it can actually help you get started. You can just say, select a template. I just want a Hello World app. Tell it to put it somewhere. And then it does this again, and I don't understand why, but anyway. So yeah, I don't usually go that way. But anyway, so now you have this app, and you see it just gives you the bare bones. It gives you the manifest.web app. There's the index.html, app.js, stuff to get started with. The problem that I encountered, the thing that I was missing from these tools was when I develop web apps, JavaScript apps, I'm going to want to have some kind of build process. You want to be able to package up your scripts, maybe do a script loader like Webpack or Browserify, do stuff with your style sheets, use a preprocessor, whatever. This doesn't really lend itself well to that, and there are some tools to help kind of scaffold a project, but none of them really did what I was hoping for. So I created a little thing. Have any of you ever used Yeoman? Yeah? Oh, my wife's updating the budget. You've heard of Yeoman, that we said? Yeah, so Yeoman is a scaffolding tool. It helps you get started building some kind of web app quickly. And there are people write different generators for them, generators that produce different things. There's generator Angular, React, blah, blah, blah. So I wrote one called generator FFPA, which stands for 44% alcohol, or Firefox packaged app, or any number of those things. Have any of you ever looked on npmjs.com and like how it just picks random words for what the npm stands for? I love that.
You can submit your own.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Have you done that?
Uh-huh.
Like what?
Nude poltergeist monarch.
I don't think I've seen that one yet.
There's hundreds.
Yeah, I love it. It's a great idea. Okay, so this it's a generator that basically gets you started with a certain kind of workflow for generating packaged apps specifically. It doesn't actually give you a development server or anything because it's meant to just be running right in the simulator or on the device. It uses Webpack, which means you can write your JavaScript with common JS modules or AMD or whatever. You can use modules. It lets you write ECMAScript 6, that's your thing, or JSX. Just some tools. And it's a work in progress, and suggestions are welcome. But it helps me get started quickly. So, can you read that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Maybe too well?
It's too easy to see others.
Okay, so, all right, so as is usual with Yeoman, you make a directory. And then you run yo. Yo invokes Yeoman, and then you tell it what generator. You give it a name. It asks for a couple things, and these will help you populate your manifest.web app. I'm just going to leave that out. And then it runs npm install and bower install to install dependencies. See how that goes with this Wi-Fi. If it doesn't, I have an example with the dependencies already installed. I should always have the text this big. All right, so they're all installed, and now you just run npm start, and it builds your app for you with Webpack. And then when you do npm start, it just does it in watch mode, so it watches the files for changes and rebuilds automatically. So now, we can open that up. And there it is. So a couple things about this. You notice that it already picked up what the name is in the description. It has the icon. I got this from a free icon set. You'll want to replace that with your own. But a cool thing, and this is kind of new in Webide. You'll notice that I opened the project root directory in the Webide. But the Webide knows to only push actually the contents of this directory to the simulator or device. So before that wasn't possible. You had to just open the actual app and that whole thing would get pushed to the device. This is a feature that was introduced in Firefox 37, which is the current stable one. So if in package.json, you can add a property here, Webide, and tell it that the package dir is dist. And so then it'll know, okay, the actual app is located in the dist directory. The benefit of this is now I can open the entire project in Webide and work from there, or make changes as I need to from there. So I can actually modify the source files instead of the built files of the app. Does that make sense? And also there's another thing you can add. You can add a build, I forgot what it's like, build script or something. Basically you can pass it a command. And then anytime you push the app, it'll run the build script before it pushes it. I didn't add that option on purpose because I wanted to be able to, first of all, have the watch thing where it could watch automatically. And also you can get output from the terminal that you couldn't get if you were just doing it in the Web IDE. But that option is available. I think that's really helpful. So now, in the Web IDE, you'll need to install, I mean, if you don't have a device, you'll need to install some simulators. And that's just pretty simple. It'll have the install simulator there. But if you have them installed, you can choose it. It just opens it up. It's like it's booting a phone. And there you have it. And then you press play on here, and it just pushes it to the phone and starts running it. It's a really amazing app right now. And then once you have that running, you can use the wrench icon to open the dev tools. And this is just like using the dev tools on a web page. So you can inspect the HTML. You can use the console. You can debug, put in breakpoints or stuff, style editing, all the things. Just to show that it's actually. That's what an alert looks like on Firefox OS. So let's look at a semi-real example. When I was thinking about a simple example to do for this, I thought, how useful would it be to have an app where you could type in some text and then it would translate that text to Morse code and vibrate that pattern? Not very useful, right? But I made it anyway, because that's all I could think of. If you want to work on something that's actually useful, come tomorrow. But this is enough to get the point across. So I'm going to open it up because it's already there. It's cleverly titled, not that, Morse Fire. All right. So we got that open. Open up the simulator. It's actually already there. But if it's already installed and you run it again, then it'll just reinstall it. If you already have the app running, it'll just install over it. It's sort of like refreshing in the browser, basically. And then so you have the app. Type in your Morse code, and there you go. Now, this isn't very interesting with the simulator, obviously, because we're using an API that only really makes a difference on an actual device. So we want to be able to use an actual device, right? So, and this is what you're actually going to be able to do on Saturday, so it's really cool. But I'm just going to show you a little bit how it works. So I have a Firefox Flame here. It's a developer reference phone. Not currently for sale, but as we were talking about earlier, it's possible to get them.
Yeah, for those of you that were here late, email me if you want people to actually hack on. I'll go and see after talk.
Yeah. We want people to have them. We want people to hack on them. So please do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the runtime Firefox Flame. It's when you have it plugged in, there's a little bit of setup involved. Depending on the system you're using, you might have to set up drivers or UDEV rules, which they said that Linux had to do UDEV rules, but I didn't actually have that experience. But I don't know, stuff. Kind of frustrating.
The part is just getting the JDK 8 installed, because now that it's done by Oracle, you can't just apt-get install it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's a Android.
But yeah, so there's some setup involved. We can talk. There'll be more information about that later. I'm gonna switch to the dock camera now. I discovered from the previous presentation that you really need to turn the brightness down a lot for the display not to get washed out on this camera. So can you see that okay? It's really fuzzy, but okay. So when you select the Firefox Flame from your select runtime menu, it's gonna have this message pop up. You need to enable USB debugging on the device, sort of like you would on an Android phone. So it's okay, and now, Actually, I don't think that must have been an old one. Okay. All right, now I'm connected, so I can, oh, that still is pretty bad. You can read this, right? Oh, I think it's because the... How do you get this? We need this light on again, because I think the contrast is too much.
I think there are other buttons on the panel in front of on the top of the desk.
Not for the lights, I don't think. Well, you can kind of get the gist of that. Oh, there we go. That's better, right? Okay, so I think I can even brighten it a little bit. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So here's the home screen. And now I'll push play on the Web IDE here. And you see it just installs it to the phone. And now it's running. And so just like before with the simulator, I can run the dev tools. I can run the inspector to inspect different elements. I don't know, I'm typing here. So I can, edit the HTML from the dev tools. Do the same, the usual thing that I don't know why that came to mind, but you can't even read that. Anyway, so cool, it's all connected. And now I can do, actual testing on the device. Now I've tried really hard to, so this app does vibration, and I've tried really hard to make it possible for you to be able to hear it in the room, and I'm sorry that it's a lot quieter than I expected, so you might have to take my word for it. We tried, that's what all the soda cans are up here for. We were trying experiments with acoustics here, but I didn't do too well in physics. If anyone has any ideas. Firefox OS. Okay, listen really carefully. Did you hear it?
I heard the first part of the first bit.
I barely heard it, so it worked. Yay! Yeah. I think it got thrown away. But yeah, I did. Actually, I put it on top.
You could put the glass just against your teeth and hang it. I guarantee it'll work.
You want to try that?
Yeah, sure. Just put the glass against your teeth. Oh wait, I gotta get down here. Well, I heard it really well.
You just got your money's worth, people. Thanks, AJ.
Okay, it didn't work as well as I thought it would.
Is that can empty or full?
This one's full. Does anyone have an empty one?
Wait a minute, I've got an idea. Do we need an empty can of soda?
Whoa! Sorry, I didn't want to. Chug, chug, chug. Woo! Well, he's working on that. Let me go back to the. All right.
Oh my gosh. My stomach.
Tap SOS now.
Oh, I feel better.
Yeah.
It didn't
You
help
came at
at
just
all.
the right time.
That didn't help at all.
Well, and then I found out actually there is an app on the marketplace that,
Makes the vibration louder.
well, it uses the LED to flash Morse code. I thought that's actually could be useful. You know, if you're on a mountain,
If you're on the
something.
line and you're like being chased by an attacker, you can see people with their flashlights like not 10 miles away.
Yeah, yeah. But hopefully that gets you thinking about the kind of stuff that you can do with the phone. There are lots of APIs available, just like on other platforms. Coming back to here, so let's say we're happy with our app. We want to publish it. So there's a command here with my generator. You can do npm run pack, and it'll build a distribution version, a production version of this app. It'll minify the scripts, style sheets. You know, it'll exclude source maps and stuff. And this total bytes thing here means that it actually generates a zip file for you that you can just take and upload. So if you'll just look here, what did we call it? Oh wait, it was the Morse fire. So you see morsefire.zip, and then it's all ready for you to go. So then you just go up to Firefox Marketplace, down at here, develop apps, takes you to the developer hub. Submit your app to the marketplace. You have to sign in. Anyway, the process is pretty straightforward. I'm not going to go through it all, but you upload the thing. It validates your app. It checks the manifest, makes sure it's valid, and then it goes through the code and runs that whole content security policy validator, and it gives you warnings or errors if they show up. You have to fill out a lot of information. It tries to extract as much information as it can from the manifest, so it saves you the trouble. But other things you have to add your privacy policy, and then once you're done, once you're almost done, it actually takes you to another site where you answer a questionnaire about the maturity level of your content. So if your dream is to make the next big fart app for Firefox OS, you're going to have to account for that when you're answering the questionnaire. It gives your app a rating in the marketplace. And yes, I think farting is one of the questions in the questionnaire. So keep that in mind. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but, you know, we're trying to be honest here. And then it tells you that it's submitted, you get an email, and then you wait, 3 years, and then you get approved for the marketplace. It's actually about a week. I think it was about a week. And you'll get approved, or they'll tell you the things that you need to change. And then people can search for your app and install it. Let me just show you an actual one that I did. Where's the search? Oh. This is an example of, so my wife actually uses the the Flame as her phone. And we had a baby recently, and she really wanted to have a way to keep track of when stuff happened. Like, when was the baby's last dirty diaper? Or, when did she go down for a nap? If any of you have kids, it's, at least like your first kid, it's really stressful to remember, okay, when do we have to do this? We're very much beginners. So I thought that'd be a good opportunity to try to cut my teeth on this, so I made this app called It Happens. You add things, you say, okay, feed the fish, and then it tracks your entries, and you just press the plus button when it happens, and then it saves it, and then you can just look at all the times that it happened. Has a long way to go, displaying the dates it's kind of ugly, but this one's actually kind of useful. So yeah, that's go ahead.
When you were saving your app, did you have to take those screenshots beforehand?
Yes, and it's actually really easy to do. I'm glad you brought that up. So regardless of whether you're running in the simulator or on a device, see if the Webide is still running. Okay. you can actually, under the runtime menu, there's a screenshot, yeah. And it takes you, and it just, yeah. Yep. So yeah, it's really simple.
Is that one of the things you fill out?
Exactly, yeah. I forgot. Thank you for bringing that up. I forgot to mention. You do need to have at least one screenshot, but have the screenshots that show kind of the workflow of your app.
And then you put that in your manifest as well?
No, I just submitted it directly to the form. Yeah, yeah. Good question. Yeah, screenshots are important too, and they make it easy. Any other questions about the experience or?
So I saw in your simulator, this is Firefox 3.0.
Yeah.
Is it a lot different than the other ones, or how often do they major updates?
There are a couple people in the room that could answer that a lot better than me, but yeah, Dan, go for it. Please.
Well, I'm happy you would.
Well, okay, so 3.0 is the development version right now. It's like the nightly updated one. It's unstable. I think it's going to be the stable version is going to be released next year, or
For 3.0?
Yeah.
I think maybe we'll get it out this fall.
okay. So it's still a ways off.
You're still on version 2, it sounds like.
Yeah. So 2.2 I think is supposed to be stable this month. I think I saw.
All of Panasonic core PDs were very Firefox OS on ship with 2.2. Yesterday we launched phones in Madagascar and Senegal that are running 2.1, I believe.
Does it have red left? Since it does.
Oh yeah, we have awesome full-on localization right to left.
It is 2.2. It's okay. That's right.
Oh really? Alright, you know what I mean?
He's a localization guy. This is Jeff. I was yeah. Jeff Beatty, everyone.
All right, so 2.2 is about where it's at.
Yeah. That's yeah. If you're targeting actual.
It's just running all of that, which is unfortunate. We've tried to work together to updates, but it's still in their hands.
So-
Like, if I was going to submit something to that marketplace, we probably want to do something that most people can access.
Yeah.
At this point, you want to do it.
Right. At least as far as the looks go, 3.0 looks really similar to the 2.x series. It was like the jump between 1.x and 2.x, at least cosmetically, were very different. It actually, when you submit, it goes through your code and it can detect what kind of features you're using and kind of give you a recommendation of, it'll say in your entry, this will require this support, Yeah, you'll need to.
Sounds like you don't go one time, so you probably get those.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward, but yeah, I would target the 2.x series. 2.0 is roughly equivalent to Firefox Desktop 32 as far as JavaScript and CSS support goes. I think 2.2 is probably 37. So something to keep in mind. Good question. Any other questions? You guys excited to start trying something? Yeah.
Another question is, I know OS development.
Yeah.
When you do that, there's a lot of base UI things that you get right out of the box. Is it completely open slate on Firefox OS? And if so, can you pull things like Bootstrap into it or something?
You're totally open to there's nothing in there by default, so you can for UI stuff you can bring in the web stuff that you're familiar with. There is the web, the interface of your OS itself it's called Gaia, and you can actually bring in Gaia as a dependency and use the CSS and stuff that uses. There's actually there's a repo called Building Blocks, which instead of being the entire user interface, which is a gigantic repo, it's huge, and you don't want to download that whole thing. There's a thing called Building Blocks, which has the CSS, and that's mainly it. CSS and some examples of how to use it. And there's some documentation on those. So actually, for my It Happens app, where was that go? I actually use the CSS from Gaia. To be perfectly honest, it wasn't really that pleasant to work with. I think that's changing. The 3.0 version is actually going to be using web components, from what I understand. But the styling, it was on this page, I needed to pretend like it's a list and other things that it's I don't know. It wasn't as flexible as, say, Bootstrap. So, but the tools are there if you want it to look like a Firefox app. Good question. Does that answer your question? Any?
Gospel library app that's being written.
Yeah. See, Ionic, that's a great option. I was curious how Ionic would perform on it, but apparently I don't know.
Well, my roommate was working on it. It seemed to work great for him.
Yeah, that's cool. Was it on a Flame that he was trying it on, or?
Yep.
Cool. Yeah, was there another question?
So, where's the developer documentation for the API? Is that just on the developer?
Yeah, so Developer Network, there's the App Center, which is all about developing apps. So they call them web APIs. Okay, so yeah, here's a list of web APIs. And they have labels here, whether it's only for certified, non-standard. This is a list of APIs that are both standard APIs and ones that are specific to Firefox OS. So that's where you can find. Yeah.
Why did they mention the certified OS so you can't use it under your hat?
That's a good question. Maybe so internal developers can use it. Although I don't know. I think this is up to date. But I think they said, okay, look at this. This is something to keep in mind. More of this documentation is written and it looks like, at least it's not necessarily completely up to date, but yeah. I could have sworn the web SMS was at privilege level now, but apparently it's not.
Is it like you can't use it on an app at all, or you can't put it in your marketplace if it's using?
So certified APIs can only come on apps that are preloaded or apps that you push yourself. Any things that the API has the ability to actually do harm. So you don't want people to be able to send a bunch of SSSs to premium numbers or to, and the goal is to eventually pull these out, but the APIs expose really raw level primitives for messing with the actual infinite code.
Right.
And all of those are already we can go behind the flag.
Right. I know the TCP socket, that used to be certified only, right?
Yeah.
But that's available privilege now, which opens up a lot of possibilities.
Oh, and there are a lot of Node wrappers for this so that you can use libraries and Node on the phone.
Really?
Yeah, so like you can use, there's a wrapper for the net module, and then like the dude that does Node Mailer, I believe there's a wrapper that will do all the SMTP stuff that the guy does as well. So a lot of native Node modules, and if it doesn't exist, I mean, because you've got the capability, you can wrap it and you can make one, but before you go try to wrap it, just check and see if somebody's already wrapped it for you, because some of that stuff is already wrapped in the Node way.
Right. Thank you. All right, so that's all. If you have any more questions, stay tuned for Dan's talk, and also, come if you want to actually play with the real phone and actually take it with you. Is that what I'm understanding? Yeah. Come tomorrow. We have phones for you to work with, develop on, hack on, use. Here's some more links. There's my generator and some of the documentation. Also, there's IRC. Mozilla has its own IRC server, irc.mozilla.org, and there are tons of channels on there. There's apps. There's one called Gaia, B2G, which is boot to Gecko, which is more like the internals of the operating system. So there's ways to talk to people. And thank you, and please leave feedback on the joined in, and also these slides are available. There's a link to the slides in the joined in item there. All right, thank you.